Hello and welcome to the tutorial about how to bake out your projections if you're using them. I have a sample here which is a basic humanoid body that has two projections, and you can see the projection frames here. One is projecting onto the back, one on the front, and named for ease of identification. But the front is going all the way through the body, the back is going partially through the body, and using a side alpha here to delineate exactly when to stop. And these files are all kept here in a folder, so you can see that I've got the front and the back, which is a color Photoshop file, and this is the alpha that I'm using from the side. So for identification purposes, you can see that this sort of blobby image is what the back is using to know just how much to paint over the existing shader. So whenever you use these layered shaders like so, and you're using projections on top of it, the way I like to do things is to have control over just how much I can change the limit of when the back is projecting onto the front. Say down here in the calves, I might want to do a better job of that. And of course things like the arms are going to be problematic, considering that you're trying to hit sort of this area here in the hip instead of just worry about the arm. And you can do this in a number of different ways, but let's get into the basics of how to convert this. So what I've done here is set up a visual simulation as to what it will look like ultimately when we bake this out. And just to review, the reason you don't want to keep it like this is, although it looks good, it is kind of it's a fake construction of the texture on the character. This doesn't actually belong to the character because they're effectively just kind of swimming through this. So if you notice the way that when I push the character back, they're just sort of swimming through the projections like someone walking in front of a slide projector. So it doesn't really belong on the character. It's just sort of a visual trick. And that's fine for now, because we're going to bake it onto the character, because what we really want is something to adhere to its UV sets. So this is what Maya's doing right now. It's ignoring the UV sets, because again, this is a slide projector. It's not really on the character, it's just projecting onto it. The only way to make sure that these colors are pervasive and stick to the model is to then take these colors, this texture, and bake it onto the UV sets. And that's what we have to do. But before we did that, the reason I set up this layered shader is that I want to see how it's going to look when I'm done. And just for the purposes of our exercise, this will do. So you can see here that what I've constructed in the Hypershade is I've got the front color, which is the red. I've got the back color, which is blue. And it's also got a transparency map. Remember, it's the side alpha. And of course, I've made the side alpha because I needed to construct it first before I utilized it here as an alpha channel. So this is kind of a complex array of things, and it's all set up. And this is the layered shader that I put together that uses the front, the back, and the side alpha. So this is what's currently on the character, and this is what we want to bake out. But before we start, there's a couple of considerations. First of all, the same way that I just showed the UV editor, when we bake this character out, please notice that the way I've got the UVs set out here, especially for this shell, is that each part of his front, there's perfect symmetry here. Like the left side of the body basically is over the right. The face has, a whole section to itself because it allows asymmetrical facial features, eye patches, things like that. But the rest of the body is all kind of, one half is right on top of the other half. So the left UVs are right over the right UVs. So when we use asymmetrical wording, like the word front and back, you're asking Maya to make a choice because it can only take in 2 of the 4 letters. Here in the word back or in the word front. And considerations like that you need to keep in mind before you go through this process so that none of this surprises you when you suddenly have an illegible word, which is what we're going to get when we bake it out. So the other thing that Maya is very touchy about, and we're going to be using the system that it has to bake these out, which is right here under Edit, Convert to File Texture. I've just put in things like filling the texture seams and 512 by 512 JPEGs. You can change all this as you see fit. The problem is, to do this, Maya is extremely picky, and it will simply throw errors your way that are unintelligible unless you know why it's being so eccentric. And the second thing is that I want to be very clear on where I'm saving this stuff out. And I'm saving it to my folder here. You can actually go in and make sure that where your images are being saved is a place that you're aware of, like so. So I know where this is going to be saved, whatever I bake out. And if not, you can always come down here into the script editor, take a look at the name of the texture it's just baked out, and then do a search for it. So let's jump in. The eccentricity I'm talking about is that anytime one of these shaders is used in another shader, Maya is going to have a problem converting it. It can't handle the fact that, let's say, for instance, the side alpha is being used in the layered material, as well as this side alpha is being used as a transparency map in this material. It just can't handle it. So really what we have to do is come in here and make sure that the layered shader is deleted. And that's pretty easy to do. The second thing is make sure that the whatever is using a transparency map does not have that transparency map anymore. So I'm going to come up here, left click on the word transparency, right click, hold it down, and just come down here to right click on it. You can break a connection. So I've already just done that inadvertently, but if you want to go back and delete a connection, you can right click on the word, and if it's connected to something here, you should get the option for break connection. Like I could do it to the color right now. I don't want to, but there we are. So with this thing selected finally, oh, there we are. There's the transparency I want to delete. So break connection, boom. So now we have these sort of standalone layer shaders, and we don't need this, so I'm going to get rid of that. So now we get these standalone shaders, and I can systematically apply each one. Right click, assign material to selection, and you can also come up here and assign it this way as well. So you can also drag it using your middle mouse button, like so. But I like to come up here and just one by one assign the material to the selection. And then with the model selected, shift, click the shader it's using, go up to Edit, go down to Convert File Texture Maya, and it will finally do it for you. And it'll take a while to think about it because it's making a choice. And we can actually come up here and see this now adheres to the UV sets. We have our first texture baked out. Again, it's running the length of the character. It's going all the way through, but it's also compromised the word, and it just looks bad. So check this by going into the folder structure. There you are. We've projected correctly, and now with confidence I can come in and do it. Assign this to the front color. Grab the model has been grabbed. I'm going to now shift select only this shader. You see I had the back color still selected. Maya will bulk at that as well. So just make sure that you have one shader selected. You can always do this by unselecting everything. Model, shift key, click on front color, and you've connected it already. So come up here to Edit, Convert File Texture, and it'll do this next system. Watch the word front here, get compromised. Tnornt, because it just shows the ONT. You can see that here. So now we have the front and the back converted into the same UV space. And the last thing we want to do is come up here and assign this the side alpha. Okay, so now you can see the black and white value that it delineates opacity. And with this selected, just select the model, shift select side alpha, go to Edit and Convert. So now you have all three of the images that you need to create your final singular shader. To do this, we need to open Photoshop and go to the folder where we baked everything out. And this is going to be a bit of a trick to use these two images as color images and use this last one as an alpha channel. So if I come in here and I ask this to open things up, I can open these images systematically, make sure that get rid of the lock so you can manipulate them. And finally read in the side alpha. Okay, so if I were to make all these kind of floating windows so we can see what's going on, all I want to do is take one image and place it over the other. Really doesn't matter which order. But for cleanliness, let's just say I'm going to take this one, holding down the Shift key, dragging it over with my left mouse button. Shift key means keep the proportions of where it is in this image. This image obviously has the same proportions, so it kind of comes in right over it. You can turn on and off the layers to validate that it is in the same space. So I'm going to get rid of the front color. Now here's the trick. We're going to come in here and select Control to select the entirety of this image. Press Control C. You can also come up here and go to select everything in the menus, and then you can copy. So select all, go to Edit, Copy. So I've copied this image. What I want to do is I want to come up here and in Maya's own language create an alpha channel for this topmost layer, because I'm asking to put an opacity map, an alpha channel, to see through it. And that's done by just coming down here to this Add Layer Mask, and then it puts it up there for me, which is great. If I click on the layer mask, there's now a little tab here called Channels. I'm going to click on that, and I can see that this new created layer mask is part of the RGB values. I'm going to enable it. I'm going to go into the square and actually Control V, paste it. And now you can see that it's affecting the RGB values. So I can select off of it and come over to layers again, and now I can see that this has an alpha channel that is only showing some of the red on top of the blue. This is my final product. So I want to come up here and save this as a Photoshop file, and I'll just call this final image or baseman texture. I got pretty much everything I need in one image. So let's just make a final Lambert color shader. And I'm going to come in here and read that file in and make that the final thing that I put onto my character. And you can see now it basically is the layered shader that I had originally. And if I come up to optimize scene size, it should get rid of everything else because it's no longer being used. So this is a nice clean way to create a singular image that you can see is now going to roll with the character no matter what they do. If they deform, if they bend, that is now their permanent texture, and I can modify it. It modifies on the character immediately. So hopefully that helps, and good luck doing layering shaders.